Welcome back, everybody, to Full Press Coverage Radio. This is the Full Press Coverage Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. This is your host, as always, Parker Hurley, and as always, I am with Brian Harker from Last Word on ProFootball.com. This is our episode 6. It's draft season, so we're going to have a major draft podcast today. Let's just get right into it. Let's bring in Brian Harker. So, how are you doing today, Brian?
Doing pretty good this morning. You're right, it's draft season, and it's time to get excited about what Pittsburgh's going to do this year.
Yep, and I don't know about you, but I've learned a lot of information about, 200 people that I've never really known before. So I've been cramming my brain, trying to figure out who are the best, values, fits, who's the steal of the draft, who's the bust of the draft, everything like that. So hopefully we'll give you a ton of information. Hopefully we'll be able to meet one more time before the draft. But as for right now, what we're going to do, this is a Pittsburgh Steelers-centered podcast, so we're going to do a 7-round mock draft. We did this last year on Last Word on Sports Radio. You guys may remember me and Pat Gellish doing this, but me and Brian are going to do it. We'll start in the first round. I give the player that I would pick if I was the Steelers in the first round. Brian gives the player that he would pick if he was the Steelers in the first round, and then we kind of go back and forth, decide whose pick was better, kind of move on all the way through the 7th round. So we're going to hit, a bevy of the Steelers' needs, a bunch of players that the Steelers have met with. I don't know about Brian, but I try to make this at least as realistic as possible. I'm not trying to pick who I would want. I'm leaning towards guys that I would want, but I'm trying to also think who the Steelers might like. So, last year me and Pat did really well at this. I remember Pat talked about TJ Watt a lot during the 7-round mock draft. I brought up the names, Cameron Sutton and Keon Adams. So, I hit 2, Pat hit 1. We got some good discussion, and we, talked about it. Some players we would maybe want to pass on, some players we'd want to hit on. We hammered quarterback in hard in the late rounds, and they ended up taking one. So it was pretty predictive what me and Pat ended up doing. So without just going too far into last year's, let's get into this year's. I will first disclaim that I used fanspeak.com to get the pool of players for each round. I wasn't just guessing at this point. So don't blame me if you think the guy isn't going to be around at this point. Matt Miller did it from Bleacher Report. These are his rankings that I'm using. So if somebody's around really late and you think they'll be gone, that's really not my fault. I'm just giving the hand I'm dealt. So without further ado, my first overall pick is linebacker Rashaan Evans from Alabama. And he's a guy that early into this process I kind of saw as didn't think he was going to be around at this point. I also saw him as a player who, stylistically, I think he fits more of Vince Williams' role than Ryan Shazier's when you're looking for an inside linebacker replacement. This guy is, he's blitzing, he's hard-nosed, he's tough against the run. There was a saying that, someone I forget, I want to give him credit, but I can't, that, at the Alabama defense, they had Sean Dion Hamilton, who was kind of the thinker, the guy who would keep everybody in place, more like the Ryan Shazier. And then there's the boomer, Rashaan Evans, who, the downhill run stuff or everything like that. But, as the draft season went on, I started to, there's more and more talk that Evans is slipping. There's some questions about his 40 time. There's some questions about he's a 1-year starter, and he missed some time. I believe it was a hamstring injury. So he has the hamstring lingering. Adding to that he's, hasn't run a 40 yet since the NFL or since the NCAA season. There's enough questions that it feels like, when I put on the tape, he's such a sound linebacker. He understands where he's supposed to be all the time. Like I said, instinctive against the run, punishing against the run, everything like that. So you think he would be a little bit higher. But I think, given that a lot of teams are shifting to more, versatile linebackers in coverage. Coverage is definitely his biggest question mark, and that straight line speed has to do with that. But he's fluid and change of direction. I think you can gain the coverage. I think you can fit him either next to Vince, or you could potentially, if you're rolling with a guy like John Bostic, maybe he passes a guy like Vince Williams. But there's a lot you can do with the linebacker position. I think we all know they're going to draft one at some point. So without rambling on too long, let's see what Brian thinks. What do you think about the Rashaan Evans pick? Do you think he'll be around? Do you think he's a good fit? Do you agree with what I'm saying that, he's kind of more of a Vince Williams style player than Shazier? Do you agree with that?
I agree with that to a point. He hasn't started but the 1 year, but I think he could be more than that. My biggest concern is, will he actually be around? And he could very well drop. I base my picks on my mock draft that I did at Last Word on Sports, based on the fact that 6 quarterbacks could go in the first round, and I really see that as something that could happen. So I went with a different player on the same team. I went with safety Ronnie Harrison from Alabama, he's fast, he's physical, and his natural instincts for the game allow him to play faster than that speed would indicate. He's a punishing tackler, especially in run defense, and rarely misses what he hits and makes contact with. He's decent in coverage for his safety and is usually in position to break up the pass. And Harrison, he tracks the ball really well, and he provides the occasional interception. But what he does best is he intimidates receivers. And, he's real fluid in his movements and gives the Steelers positional versatility in the fact that he can line up at strong or free safety and as an inside linebacker in nickel and dime sub packages. The only thing better than him being a first round pick in this mock draft is being their first pick in 2 weeks. Now, I like Rashaan Evans, and if he's around, I would definitely not argue with that pick. But at this point, I see Harrison as being Pittsburgh's first rounder in the real thing.
I could completely be fine with Ronnie Harrison. I think you're completely right that, when Tomlin was at the Alabama Pro Day, Colbert was at the Alabama Pro Day, the defensive coordinator, linebackers coach, secondaries coach, the whole crew was there. They were looking at that entire defense. I could see it being Evans. I could see it being Harrison. I think that they're interested in both of them, and I think that both of them really have the same characteristic that really pushes them ahead of a lot of the other guys. And it's like you said, understanding and just, just the ability to have that instinct to, like you said with Harrison, whether it be coverage or run stuffing, he's there for it. Whether it be Evans the same way. Like I said, he's instinctual, he's quick in change of direction, he can do a lot of things, he can wear a lot of hats because of his versatile profile. Evans is a guy who even lined up off of the edge at times. Ronnie Harrison's a guy, like you said, strong, free, slot, linebacker, basically, whatever, it doesn't matter. He can do a lot of that. Before we get into my second pick, because I do really like that pick, there's really not anything that I'm going to say against it. Early into the draft process when it was very clear that Davis was a strong safety, I said, maybe Harrison he's better as a strong than a free, in my opinion, especially when you have a single high free. But if you're going to, shuffle too high, or Sean Davis and Harrison, too high deep, I don't have any issues with that. Just one question before we get into my second round pick that I wanted to throw at Brian, because he talked about he's not sure if Rashaan Evans will be there. So it seems to me that there's 4 big linebackers in this draft. There's Raekwon Smith and Tremaine Edmonds, who nobody really thinks will be there. And then there's Leighton Vander Esch and Rashaan Evans, who a lot of people actually do think will be there for the Steelers at the end of the first round. Just of the two, I know there's a chance that neither will be there. I know there's a chance that one will be there. I know there's a chance that both will be there. But of the two, between Leighton Vander Esch and Rashaan Evans, which of the two would you rather have fall to pick 28?
I think I'd rather have Rashaan Evans. He might not be the athlete that Vander Esch is, but there's just something about his game that fits that Steeler defense. He like you said, he knows where. How should I say this? He just has that thing, that physicality to him, that intimidation factor. That he's just a physical guy, and I think he fits the Steeler defense better than Vander Esch. Just my opinion.
I know what you mean. It is something about, even just when you look at him, I think he weighs less than Vander Esch. I think that's actually definitely true, because I think Vander Esch has 2 or 3 inches on him. But Evans just seems more rocked up. He seems more physical. Like I said, it's really hard to watch him without just saying, downhill punisher, things along those lines. So I get what you're saying. I think the upside is higher in Vander Esch, and I just have just slightly Vander Esch ahead of him. But at the same time, I think Vander Esch will. Starting to think there's a more likely chance that Vander Esch will be gone than Rashaan Evans. I think that he's not running a 40 time. He has 1 year of experience. He has that injury background. I think that's gonna get him to fall here into the first round. We'll see how low it will be, but that'll wrap up the first round. You got Ronnie Harrison for Brian. I got Rashaan Evans. We'll move into my second round pick, which It's a pick that surprises me a little bit. It's a pick that maybe I wouldn't make, but I actually really like it when the whole draft comes together. So in the second round, I have them going wide receiver, and I have them taking James Washington from Oklahoma State. And there's two real reasons for it. One is that Martavis Bryant is leaving next year. There's just no doubt about it. The team's not going to trade him, but they're going to let him walk next year, and they're going to get a third-round compensatory pick back for him. James Washington is the perfect replacement for Martavis Bryant. This is the guy that was the Biletnikoff winner, receiver of the year in college football, mainly because of all this guy can do is take the top off. You look at a guy like Martavis Bryant, all he is, size, speed, just everything natural for him. James Washington is almost completely different. He's about 6'1", 200 pounds, so he's like shorter and thicker than Martavis Bryant. He's not nearly as fast as Martavis Bryant, but this dude gets deep like it's nobody's business. His ability to change speeds during his route, I think, is the best in the class. I don't even think it's close. If there was a way that I could describe James Washington, it's really just a more physical, better-handed version of Mike Wallace. So, a lot of people, their big issue with Mike Wallace, he doesn't, bring in the contested catches. He could have made that, he could have high-pointed that one catch. He could have tracked that a little better. That's what James Washington is just absolutely excellent at. I'm seeing a lot of people think that he might even slip into the third round, but I think the Steelers have a lot of interest in him. My second reason for them drafting him is the interest in him, and I think a lot of people are pinning the Steelers to Mason Rudolph because they've had a lot of connection with Oklahoma State. And from what I've seen from Oklahoma State, the Steelers went there for their pro day. They took James Washington out to dinner, not Mason Rudolph. And, they did meet with Mason Rudolph during the pro day. But, who's to say those aren't just questions about James Washington that the Steelers are asking? Now it looks like we drummed up some interest in Mason Rudolph, but we see James Washington as the best receiver in the class. He's the best deep threat in the class, in my opinion. Like I said, he's got a Mike Wallace type of skill set. So maybe they're saying, if you guys want to let, just like Juju last year, if you guys want to let this stud high upside receiver fall into the late second round for us, we're fine with it. Like I said, I don't think it's conventional for the Steelers, but I really like James Washington. I think the Steelers really like James Washington, and it just seems like the need is going to be there at some point. He can get on the field next year as a fourth receiver who can just take the top off, and then next year he's just in for Martavis Bryant. So what do you think? Have you watched much James Washington? And then just who is your second-round pick?
Yeah, Washington reminds me a little bit of Anquan Bolden, maybe a faster version of him.
Because he's so physical,
he does know how to create. Yeah, and he knows how to create separation. He's sneaky quick. He's not fast, but a lot like Antonio Brown, he knows how to create that separation and get open. So while it's not the pick I would make, that's a pretty interesting selection. I mean, you just bucked everybody's way of thinking of how Pittsburgh's doing things, including mine, and I got to say, it's really not a bad call. It was surprising.
Outside the box, baby. That's what I do.
Exactly. That's about as outside of the box as you can get, but in a logical way. So right. I really like that pick. I went with linebacker Darius Leonard out of South Carolina State. I mean, his athletic ability and his speed, his time in the 40 is 4.7. But once again, he plays a lot faster than that speed. And I look at it like, how often does a linebacker have to run 40 yards downfield either way? Mm-hmm. So, and I figure there's no way you're going to replace a star the caliber of Ryan Shazier. But the Steelers are going to look for someone with similar traits, and Leonard from South Carolina State fits that bill. I mean, he lined up an outside linebacker for SCU, and he played with the huge chip on his shoulder. His real value for Pittsburgh comes by moving him inside. And that chip on his shoulder comes from he was passed over by Clemson for a scholarship when the summer before he thought he had one. So he took that slight, and he took it out on everybody in the MEAC conference. He's a sure tackler with excellent sideline-to-sideline range. And he, like I say, really has impressive closing speed. He diagnoses plays quickly, and he finishes what he starts. What caught my eye was he finished his career with 381 tackles, with 264 being of the solo variety. And that included 20 sacks, 42 tackles for loss, and 7 forced fumbles. And he showed the ability to drop in coverage. He's defended 13 passes, and he's picked off 6 more. So it would be an immediate upgrade at the position, and it really would take some of the sting away from losing Shazier. Like I say, you're not going to replace Shazier, but he's more than capable of filling the position. And I think he would be a good complement to Vince Williams.
Yeah, I like that pick. I think, I said it before the show that, we're trying to be as realistic as possible with these, I think you hit it on the head immediately. Ronnie Harrison, a guy the Steelers have shown a lot of interest in, and Darius Leonard, a guy who, is coming in to visit the Steelers. You talked about it, a guy who plays with a chip on his shoulder. That's seems to be the type of, players that the Steelers tend to target. And I mean, you talk about South Carolina State, that's where Javon Hargrave went to college. So, if any team in the NFL is going to say, well, who knows what Darius Leonard's all about? He's such a small school kid. The Steelers are going to know what Darius Leonard's all about. So that's not a bad pick at all. I think you hit the 2 biggest needs, safety and middle linebacker in the first 2 picks. So I love that. Darius Leonard, I think, is one thing that I always say when I'm watching small school players is, I don't know how you watch a lot of your players, but I do a lot of on Draft Breakdown where they kind of put a big square around the player that, they're highlighting in this place. So, this is the guy that you want to be watching. When I'm watching a small school player, I want it to be without that square, without the square pre-snap. I want to just know who that player is because he needs to stand out well above everybody else on tape, And when Alabama's playing Clemson, the whoever a first round pick doesn't have to stand out on every single play. When you go to South Carolina State and you want to be in the NFL, you better stand out on every single play. And he was not hard to find because he's just so much bigger than everybody else, and he's just running, like you said. I don't think his 40-yard dash does him justice because just sideline to sideline, just cutting running backs off, before they have any chance to cut up upfield. Just extremely long, extremely rangy. Like you said, I'd compare him more to a compliment to Vince Williams than, like I said, with Rashaan Evans is almost more of a similar thing to what you're getting out of Vince Williams. So it's probably a better fit stylistically in the long term if you're keeping Vince Williams in the long term. So I don't mind the pick at all. One thing that I was just debating because, I was, looking at a variety of scenarios in the second round and everything like that. Maybe they do take a safety in the first round like you did. I just want to ask you, similarly to my question about Rashaan Evans versus Van Der Esch, how would you feel about Darius Leonard versus Malik Jefferson from Texas? And I know, maybe you were under the assumption that Jefferson wasn't there in the second round. I'm seeing him there a lot in a bunch of mock drafts. I know the Steelers brought Jefferson in like they brought in Leonard. I honestly think Leonard is almost like the small school version of Jefferson, where they're just both big, free-ranging, long linebackers who maybe aren't completely there instinctive, but like you said, personality-wise, chip on their shoulder, everything like that. I see the two as similarly, so I'm just wondering where you stand on Malik Jefferson compared to Darius Leonard. If Jefferson is there, are you taking one over the other?
That's a tough call. Think of and I can't think of a better example, so forgive me for this, but think of the most beautiful set of twin girls you've ever seen. And Darius Leonard, they're basically, you'd fight for the ugly one. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't really think between Malik Jefferson and Darius Leonard, I don't think you could go wrong with either one of them. I'd be tickled pink if he was available in the second round.
You're just hoping that one's there.
I couldn't be any happier,
Yep, just either one is there, and you'll be happy with it. Which brings up a good point that maybe the top 4 guys are gone, or maybe there is only the 4th best linebacker is the only guy there in the first round. Then yeah, maybe you do pass on it, and if you have to decide between Darius Leonard and Malik Jefferson, there are worse things to happen in the world. So definitely an interesting thought to go about it. We'll get into my third round pick, and I'm kind of getting back onto track. I shook things up a little bit with the second round wide receiver, but I'm in the third round going right back to safety. kind of completing what you did in the first two rounds, and I'm going with Terrell Edmonds from Virginia Tech. And this is a guy where, his older brother, or his younger brother actually, Tremaine Edmonds, is getting all of the top 10 hype as, people are comparing him to Brian Urlacher, this 6'5 linebacker who can get out and run in space and do everything. And, the Steelers would love Tremaine Edmonds, but if they're going to settle for Terrell Edmonds in the third round, I love it. Because the big thing about Tremaine is, he's so big and he's also so athletic and rangy and just loose hips, light feet, everything like that, everything you're looking for in a huge NFL player, an impact player. The thing is, Terrell has all of that. When you look at his mock draftable web and you look at his size, this is a guy that's 6'1", 217 pounds. Is that a small linebacker? Is that a big safety? But, you look at his vertical jump. He jumped out of the gym 41.5 inches. His broad 134, 4.47 in the 40-yard dash. I mean, if you go to his mock draftable web, it is pretty much filled out the entire way around, except for his height. I mean, he's just a little bit shorter for a big safety prospect. But as far as athleticism, upside, the family bloods of the Edmonds, I mean, his brother, like I said, is a top 10 pick. His dad was a 2-time Pro Bowler at tight end. He's coming off of a collarbone injury. It ended his last season at Tech a little bit early, and I think that's why there's not nearly as much buzz on this kid, because I think he can do it all. I think he can be that linebacker / safety hybrid that Morgan Burnett's kind of stepping in to do. I also think he can be a strong safety like Sean Davis. I also think he can be a free safety and play beside Sean Davis. So I think that just the upside and athleticism that comes with Terrell Edmonds and just how fluid he is. And, Tremaine has a lot of instinctual issues. Terrell has some instinctual issues. He also has the injury issue. But in the third round, I think this guy gets on the field immediately as a rookie because of what he can do in sub-package football. And he's so big that he can match up on tight ends and running backs. But I also think the upside is there, that if he's a starting free safety, if he's a starting really whatever, he can play a variety of positions. I think he can get on the field early, and I think he can get on the field late. So I really like Terrell Edmonds from Virginia Tech. Let me know what you think about him, what you know about him, and let's hear your third round pick.
I like Terrell Edmonds a lot. A lot of publications and people have him ranked as the 11th best safety in the draft, but I take him over Justin Reed, which some people think the Steelers might now pick in the first round.
Right.
Really, the only weaknesses with Edmonds are their coaching issues. You know what I mean? He could be too aggressive sometimes in run defense.
Right.
Stares down receivers, but once again, he wasn't asked to cover a lot of receivers. You know what I mean? He was their physical guy. He was the one that stuffed the run. He was the one that came up and made plays closer to the line of scrimmage. I mean, he did, 1.5 sacks. He's got blitz capability, but when you're not asked to do something, of course, that's going to be a weakness. And with the new Steelers defensive back coach,
Tom Bradley.
Tom Bradley. Now, he's a coach. Nothing against Carnell Lake, but this guy's a communicator. He's a college guy. All of his career just about. So he's going to take a guy like Edmonds and turn him. He's going to polish him up. Yeah, I really like that Terrell Edmonds pick a lot. I don't think the Steelers could go wrong if he's available.
I think the upside is worth it at that point for sure.
He's probably got a higher ceiling than most cornerbacks in this draft.
That's what I mean. Like I said, as a rookie, he can just step on the field immediately. I mean, sure, he's not an impact player that soon, but the long term of him being an impact player combined with the short term of him being able to get on the field, I think that's really impressive from, a guy who, like you said, 11th ranked safety, third round prospect, everything like that. I love it.
And he has what the Steelers love. They always love taking that younger guy.
Yep.
That's not polished yet.
Yep.
And even if it's a red shirt year for him, which it wouldn't be, he'd probably, like you say, step on the field and play immediately. This guy's his intelligence, though, is I don't think too many people give him enough credit for being an intelligent player.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the key. I mean, his athletic ability and his intelligence, and you got a winner there.
I agree. And, he's a guy that I would like I said, I would take a receiver in the second round because if you're going to give me the discount of him in the third, I'm going to jump all over it. So, who's your third round pick?
Okay, I went with Georgia running back Nick Chubb.
I love it.
Now, obviously, this is likely Bell's last season with Pittsburgh. There's no way, if he doesn't come up with a long-term deal, they'll let him walk next year. They'll get the compensation pick for him. But Chubb seems to be overshadowed by Sony Michel. Now, he had a monster season in his freshman year, replacing Todd Gurley. And I remember that being a Georgia fan, like, all right, what are we going to do with Todd Gurley gone? Who's going to step up? And Chubb had shown, that he was just as good as Gurley, just as explosive. And he was off to an even better sophomore season until it was derailed by an ACL tear in his left knee. Now, he returned for his junior season, and it was respectable, but he lacked that home run speed that really made him special. And this past season, that speed's returned. And now, paired that breakaway speed paired with his power and balance has made him one of the most dangerous backs in college football again. And you take away that injury, and I truly believe he's in the running for being the first running back taken. He averaged more than 6 yards per carry at Georgia, and he scored 44 touchdowns. And overall, he had 4,769 yards. Like I said, that's because of his breakaway speed, his power, his balance. But he also has great vision and excellent lateral movement. And his leg drive is underrated. People don't see him really as a power back, but he's a power back with speed. So he really fits that Steeler offense. He can wear defenses down, and the key is he's got a lot better hands than he's given credit for because, once again, he wasn't asked to catch passes at Georgia. He was asked to pound the ball, hit the hole fast, make that one cut, and he was gone. So I really would love to see him available in 2 weeks. I think it'd be a great pick in the third round.
Yeah, so you go through our top three picks, both mine and yours. Linebacker, safety for both of us. I have the Martavis Bryant replacement. You have the Le'Veon Bell replacement. So we're kind of still thinking along the same lines. I love Nick Chubb. I just think that's such a great pick. Like you said, I think there was a point in time where it was a no-brainer. He was better than Saquon Barkley. There's still a point in time where he could be in that level with Saquon Barkley, and I have no issue saying that at all. I think it was like a Clemson game in his freshman year, I want to say it was. And it got to the fourth quarter, and he wore that team down, and he just ran all over Clemson. It was before his injury, and I just remember I thought he was going to be, like what Ezekiel Elliott is now in the NFL. That's what I saw from Nick Chubb. And like you said, he lost a lot of his burst, lost some of his lateral agility, but he started to get it back. And in his senior season, you really started to see it. And the combination of power and lateral cuts and agility, just nobody else has it. Even Saquon Barkley, we gush over the way he's able to cut and just how fluid he is in his lateral movements. Chubb isn't quite there, but he makes up for it in power. He's much more powerful than Saquon Barkley. So I love Nick Chubb. It's really hard for me to say anything disappointing about him because everybody talks about his most devastating weakness is that injury. Is the burst back, is the lateral agility back. Like I said, it came and went on tape. You could see it coming, every once in a while. But then he goes to the combine, and he's the second best running back at the combine, and it's not even close. Saquon Barkley just destroyed the combine. Everybody knew that was going to happen, but Nick Chubb was right there. We're talking broad jump for broad jump, vert for vert, just doing everything that Saquon Barkley was doing. And, I walked away from that just saying, this guy is fully healthy. And that's the scariest thing, because I haven't even thought about him being healthy for like 2 or 3 years now, but he's fully healthy. He's scary as heck. People are talking about Sony Michel, like you said, in the first round. Give me Nick Chubb in the third round over Sony Michel in the third round every single time. I would love that pick. We're still on the same page. That's my favorite pick so far. So we'll move into my pick. I think it's the fifth round pick, but it's the 49ers fifth round pick. So it's a really high fifth instead of a low fourth. It's not a huge deal. But I went with an edge rusher. I went with Kylie Fitz from Utah. And Kylie Fitz from Utah is another player who, I guess you could say similarly to Chubb, coming out of high school, 4-star recruit, highly recruited, went to UCLA. It didn't work out for him at UCLA. He ended up transferring to Utah, and when he transferred to Utah, it kind of started to snowball downhill on him. Injuries really affected most of his situation, but when he was on the field, you saw that 4-star recruit, you saw the high upside player. You saw a force player who he went to the combine. He was fully healthy at the combine. He didn't need to do any medical rechecks. And what he did at the combine was he absolutely torched it. He came in at 6'3 and 3/4, 263. Even for an edge rusher, that's a little big. But his 3-cone tested in the 95th percentile, his 20-yard shuttle in the 91st percentile, and his 40-yard dash in the 82nd, and his bench press in the 91st. You talk about the combination of, like I said with Chubb, the combination, you just don't see people that big play with that much power, but also have that much lateral agility. That's what Kylie Fitz brings. He's very powerful. He knows how to use his arms. He knows how to get around the edge. Truly the big question with him and why he's going to fall into the 5th round, because he tested he basically tested like an Everson Griffin type of player. But the reason he's going to fall into the 5th round is because of all those injuries. It's now 2 seasons worth of injuries. I want to say he's played 20 games in 3 years, something along those lines. It's really not a good statistic, but UPMC, you get the Steelers doctors in there, and maybe you look at it and maybe you just say, the upside, like I said, is a 10-sack-a-year player. Who are we pushing out the door? Arthur Moats isn't even signed. He could get on the roster as like a fifth outside linebacker, and if he gets hurt, it's just a 5th-round pick. If he hits, it's another James Harrison, Antonio Brown type of situation. So I always want to swing at this point. Top 3 rounds, maybe you play it safe. You try and get a starter here, a starter there. 5th round, I'm swinging for the fences. So Kylie Fitz from Utah is my pick. Do you know anything about him? What do you think about him? And what is your pick?
Well, with Kylie Fitz, like you said, injuries are the biggest concern with him. He played 19 games in his first 2 years, and he only played 10 in his last 2.
There it is.
So, as far as the injuries, I don't look at what he did or what he didn't do because he was injured. I look at what he did when he was on the field. And, 9 tackles for losses and 7 sacks in 2 years, forced 4 fumbles, broke up 10 passes. That's not too bad for a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", 260 pounds.
Right.
Yeah, that's I like that pick. I really do. It makes you wonder if somebody's not going to reach for him earlier because of that.
Right. Yeah. It all comes down to the medical recheck, which I just have no information on.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, I like the pick. That's a real good pick. I'm with a similar line of thought, but I went with Shaquem Griffin out of Central Florida.
Right. Okay.
He was a 2016 ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and he put on an eye-popping show at the Combine this year. And he did it all with one hand, which is what's really amazing. He lost that hand at 4 due to a rare prenatal condition, but he never let that stop him. And now he's on the verge. He's going to live his NFL dream. He's extremely fast. He makes plays all over the field. He finished with 74 tackles this season, 13.5 for losses and 7 sacks. And he recorded an interception. So he's got one hands, and he seems to be better than some of our defenders with 2 hands.
It's the truth.
He broke up 3 passes and forced 2 fumbles. Can you imagine him? He's got that same positional versatility that Sammy Harrison has. He can get in Butler's system, and he can play multiple roles and sub packages, and he could be a demon on special teams to get started.
Yep.
So that's who I went with.
Yeah, absolutely love that pick as well. You talked about it. You brought in Darius Leonard, a linebacker with his chip on his shoulder. How do you try and replace a guy like Ryan Shazier? Well, sign John Bostic and then draft 2 guys with huge chips on their shoulder and just let it play out. Just let the cream rise to the top, just let it happen. I like Shaquem Griffin a lot. Everybody knows his upside is, his tape is a 2nd-round player. The weakness is obviously the hand missing. I listened to, I forget who it was. I think it was Takeo Spikes was talking about Griffin and, playing without a hand and, just kind of trying to give his insight. And, basically what he said was, if you're going to try and make him a pass rusher on the edge, he has no chance whatsoever. He's already too small as far as his frame. But on top of that, just the inability to grab with your hand it'd be really hard on the edge. But he said as a linebacker, he said, he had played games with a clubbed hand where he has no ability to grip with that hand. And, he's out on the field in, January playoff games. And he just said, it's almost not even a weakness because, Griffin's been playing this way for 20-something years. If anybody's used to not reaching with that hand or having to grab with that hand, it's him. So he can, move and manipulate his body to already work around that deficiency he has. So he's going to fall because of that deficiency, but I could see a starter here at some point despite that deficiency. And, I've watched enough tape of Shaquem Griffin to know 100% that he's better than Tyler Matakevich with one hand. There's just no doubt in my mind. I mean, there's just no doubt. Because number one, like you said, he can get on the field in special teams. He's faster than Matakevich. He's got more instincts. He's more powerful. He's gonna maybe Shaquem Griffin misses one tackle because he's not able to grab a guy's jersey as he's pulling away, but he's gonna make 3 tackles that Tyler Matakevich couldn't make because Tyler Matakevich was too slow and short to get down there. Or Tyler Matakevich got blown up by a lead blocker that Shaquem Griffin was able just to weave and juke around. He's that physically talented. So I think that the base of a special teams player, and like I said, the base of a player who is an upgrade over Tyler Matakevich, is what makes you say in the 5th round, yes, let's do this. And then, like I said, all of a sudden the competition's there and he looks more instinctual than Darius Leonard, or, he's a great mix and match guy with John Bostic. And then all of a sudden, a 5th round pick turns into, just an amazing bet. So I don't mind that pick at all. I'm all about Shaquem Griffin. I probably would have had him, but I also have another linebacker coming up here later. But let's get into my 2nd round pick, which is a defensive tackle. It's P.J. Hall from Sam Houston State. He's an undersized guy, but he mainly plays nose tackle, and I really like him because his explosion up the field. You talk about a guy like Jarvis or Javon Hargrave, that's kind of the newer version of the nose tackle. That's what the Steelers are looking for more than Casey Hampton. I think we can all agree that Javon Hargrave and Casey Hampton are different stylistically despite playing the same position. But I think that this kid, P.J. Hall, is much more like Javon Hargrave in that he's really quick off of the ball. He bursts off of the ball. He explodes into the backfield. He's more looking to get sacks than he is, to kind of just clog lanes. So, there's been a lot of talk. A lot of my mocks have not really featured much defensive line help. But I think it's, Evan Silva from Roto World and NBC Sports, Bill Barnwell on ESPN. There's a few other guys who are just true NFL guys. They're not media types. They're, the true meat and potatoes NFL guys who are coming out and saying that the Steelers have a true weakness on the defensive line. And while I don't necessarily agree with that, they point to high snap percentages by Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward. And, they say, well, the run defense always seems to, falter over the course of the season. And, we looked at it in the Jaguars game. And, sure, it's really tough to blame Tuitt and Hayward because of how physically talented they are. But maybe you are wearing them down a little bit to the point where, maybe you do need some more depth. I know they tried to put LT Walton, Dan McCullers is signed. You can cut Dan McCullers like it's nobody's business. And I think P.J. Hall is just because of his upfield penetration is just already better than McCullers. But they tried LT Walton at nose tackle because they have no faith in McCullers at nose tackle. Walton, I mean, he's just more of he's a better end. He's fine in nickel situations, but if you want a true nose tackle, I think Hall is like 340, something along that line. So, you just get the size with him. You get the nose tackle. I like him, like I said, from Sam Houston State, a small school kid. I think that, along with him being a little bit undersized in terms of height, is what is pushing him down. But I'm completely fine with him, like I said, especially in the late 5th round. So, what do you think? Do you know anything about him? He's 6'1", 310. So, do you know anything about P.J. Hall? And just overall, what do you think about depth on the defensive line?
Well, he reminds me, the depth. That's the Steelers' biggest problem. Once again, I take P.J. Hall right now over Daniel McCullers just for the simple fact that McCullers has the size, the quickness and the strength to dominate, and he does nothing.
Right.
Tomlin might threaten him with his job or this or that, and he's okay for a week or two, and then he disappears. P.J. Hall is all about the motor. And when you're looking at a guy with 42 sacks, 86 and a half tackles for loss. He's a small school guy like Javon Hargrave. So once again, they're both coming into this league with a chip on their shoulder. They're gonna do what people say they can't do, and they're gonna stand out. Put P.J. Hall at USC, put him at Georgia, put him at Alabama, and are these guys not talking first rounder? So I love this pick. I really do. And that's addition by subtraction. Getting rid of. I like L.T. Walton.
Right.
But, I'm intrigued by this pick. I got to tell you.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said,
around.
Fitz is the upside bet, and Hall's kind of the safe. Maybe he'll never be more than a depth guy, but he contributes next year, and that matters.
Oh yeah. And for his being undersized, he makes up for that with quickness. He's quicker than I thought he would. The guy that size should be.
I agree. So, who's your second? Who's your second, fifth round guy?
Well, now I take a look at replacing potentially Martavis Bryant.
There we go.
By taking Cedric Wilson out of Boise State. Now the name's intriguing enough, as his father played a big role in the trip to Super Bowl 40 with those big catches against Denver and Cincinnati. Unlike his father, he's a little bit bigger. He's a bit stronger, and he's one of the best prospects in this draft at tracking the deep ball. And he's got excellent body control. He's really adept at breaking off routes and creating separation. When he catches the ball, he's athletic and physical. He does need to add bulk, though. He's to play as physical as he does at times, he's not going to make it in the NFL without getting stronger. He'll have problems with press coverage. His initial value will come on special teams, and he is a solid punt returner. So he really, he fits what Pittsburgh likes their wide receivers to do. And if he can return punts in the NFL, he would take a lot of pressure off of Antonio Brown. I would really like to see. I believe he'll be around, and it would be a good pick for the Steelers in the fifth round. And he, like I say, he fits that Steeler receiver mold. He's got that physical mentality. He's a willing blocker. Sometimes he misses, but most of the time he blocks, and he blocks to the whistle. So he'd be a good fit in that Pittsburgh offense.
Yeah, people probably hate listening to us because we kind of just give our pick and then one of us gushes over the pick and then we just give our pick. But I love that pick so much. And, I have it written down somewhere that as I was watching these receivers and as I was thinking, Martavis Bryant replacement, we know he only has so many years left, There were three real names that I just consistently kept coming back to. And it was, James Washington, who I had, DJ Chark from LSU, who I'm really interested in, and Cedric Wilson from Boise State. So, two of the three guys that I really think, not only that I want, that I think the Steelers want as well, we hit on them, and I just love the Cedric Wilson pick. You hit on his scouting report absolutely perfectly. It's like you said, breaking off routes to create separation, going to get the ball in the air, tracking the ball, everything like that. And, two stats that just completely come to mind with Cedric Wilson is he was number one in all of NCAA across the country last year in contested catch rate, and he was number one in jump ball reception. So, you hit it on the head absolutely, and there's one guy that I consistently go back to when I compare Cedric Wilson to an NFL type of talent, and that would be Marvin Jones from the Detroit Lions. And it's like you said, he's kind of taller and slender. He's not physical enough to beat press, but if you give him a free release, you're going to pay for it because even when he doesn't get separation, if he's even with you, he's beating you in the air. Despite that, like you said, a long, slender frame, long arms, everything like that, but he's physical enough to beat you in the air. And Marvin Jones had a great season last year. He's flying way under the radar. A lot of people, should probably watch some Marvin Jones tape if you don't think he's just an excellent receiver. And, while Cedric Wilson is limited in the same way as Jones, Jones, like I said, he's having an excellent college career, doing the same things that Cedric Wilson can do. So I love Cedric Wilson, and he's one of, if the Steelers go home with a receiver, he's definitely one of the top three that I hope they go home with. If they're passing on a guy like Washington in the second round, I'm all about a guy like Cedric Wilson right here. So we'll get into just two more picks to go. They're both the seventh round picks. I'm going to go with a linebacker again. You talked about, you double dipped with Darius Leonard and Shaquem Griffin. I'm going to double dip on Rashaan Evans with Jack Cichy, or I think I said that right, Cichy from Wisconsin. He's a linebacker who missed the entire 2017 season because he tore his ACL. But he's a linebacker that if you look at his 2016 tape, that was a second-round pick. This guy, I don't want to say, he's a white linebacker, and you always tend to compare white linebackers to Sean Lee. But his instincts and his ability to recognize and his ability to react quickly and fluidly, it's Sean Lee-esque. It really is. And I just think if he came into 2017 and, blew it up, he'd be a first-round pick or a second-round pick, or he'd be in that Rashaan Evans discussion. It's just, he hasn't played in over a year now. But he went to the combine. He absolutely, he was 100% healthy. There was no need for a recheck. In the broad jump, he placed in the 96th percentile, one of the best there is. Above average in the 20-yard shuttle, above average in the three-cone, above average in the vertical. However you look at it, he tested at the combine like he's a guy who's fully healthy and he's ready to play. The ACL isn't the only issue. He's had lingering shoulder issues. I believe he has a hamstring issue as well. He's a guy that just like Kylie Fitz, just second round pick on paper, but if he's not on the field, he's worth nothing. And you're gonna get a discount, but I'm gonna take a shot in the seventh round on a guy who, we could be looking 5 years from now, and it's Cichy starting next to Rashaan Evans. Evans just bumps Vince Williams, and Cichy bumps John Bostic. I do truly believe that the talent with Cichy is just that real. It's just he can never stay healthy. A good comparison I had was Alex Anzalone from Florida, played for the Saints last year. Really in the first half of the season, he was helping to revitalize that Saints defense. He was excellent, but he was a guy that spent his entire Florida career injured, missed the second half of the season as a rookie. So, do you take the high upside of, he gets on the field early as a rookie, makes an impact versus, he may not finish many seasons. In the seventh round, I am, so I'm all about Jack Cichy. Do you know anything about him, and who is your second to last pick?
I don't know much about Cichy, but I imagine that T.J. Watt does, and I imagine that T.J. Watt's probably picked this guy because the hallmark of that Wisconsin defense is they're blue-collar. They get the job done. They're disciplined, and they know their assignments. So it's, how could you really go wrong in the seventh round with a Wisconsin linebacker with a high upside?
Yep. Yeah, and I'm assuming
I like
Watt's given the praise. I do agree that I think that the T.J. Watt factor might have to play into that as well.
Yeah, because is he newer to the position?
Who's that, Cichy?
Yeah.
No, he was starting last year right next to Watt was, on the edge, but also playing in space. They started right next to each other a lot.
So they know each other inside out.
I could only imagine. Yeah, I bet they do. And I bet that TJ is telling them this is a smart dude because you don't even need to get him on the whiteboard to know that he knows what the heck he's doing on the football field.
Yeah, he's not much of a thumper, but he can move.
Right.
And that's what the NFL is becoming. A defense full of fast people that could shut down these spread offenses. So I like that pick. I really do.
Nice. So who do you have for second to last one?
All right, I went with a guard, Wyatt Teller out of Virginia Tech. And what stands out about Teller is, all right, he's a converted defensive lineman, so he's raw, but he's a grinder, and he's nasty. He plays to the whistle. He's much better at run blocking than he is in pass protection, but once again, you got Mike Munchak to work those issues out because this guy's got the tools for him to develop. The Steelers, they typically have had success recently with offensive linemen who were either drafted late or not drafted at all. And this guy reminds me a lot of Kyle Long. He's just, there's nothing flashy about him, but he's going to beat you up for 60 minutes. So I could really get behind this pick in the 7th round. Once again, you got nothing to lose. This guy is the type of player that Pittsburgh loves to take. A ton of potential, and he's young.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. Swing for the fences in the 7th round. Go for it. I haven't really thought offensive line, but if you are thinking offensive line, you are thinking it late, and you are thinking it because Ramon Foster is probably the next guy to move on. So I agree that you probably jump on a guard at that point. He's a guy that I haven't really watched yet. I'll be honest, I don't know much about it. I trust your word on him, and I just trust that, any guy that Mike Munchak likes and any guy that Mike Munchak's going to bring in, I just full faith in them being able to develop him into a guy that, maybe he competes with B.J. Finney for Ramon Foster's job here in a couple years. So I could definitely see that. I have no issue with that, especially in the 7th round. We're kind of just taking shots. So if you see starter potential, I see starter potential in a guy like Sichi, I took it. You see a starter potential in a Wyatt Teller, and you take it as well. On to my last pick. I haven't been able to. I just wasn't able to cram in some type of Le'Veon Bell replacement, so I ended up going with a running back late in this draft. It was Chase Edmonds from Fordham. So, another small school guy. I know kind of towards the end I have some small school guys, some injury guys. Maybe people don't like that, but I'm shooting for high upside, and I think that you can get some of that from Chase Edmonds. And, when you look at his combine testing and you compare it to some names that are pretty similar to him, I think you can understand what type of player Chase Edmonds is. And the most comparable player to Edmonds is Amos Zaraway, a former Steeler. So that could help paint a picture. Sonny Michel's a very comparable back. Ronald Jones, LaMichael James, and Mark Walton, another running back in this class. And then Felix Jones is the other one. So I think you can understand what I'm shooting for here. And this is a guy that I actually compared to Danny Woodhead because just really short passing back. He's extremely quick. His 3-cone was in the 89th percentile. His 20-yard shuttle was in the 93rd percentile. Just change of direction and agility. Just get the ball in his hands. Those short little crossers, slants, everything like that. And he could really do damage with the ball in his hands. He can get open in space. We talked about it. I think we had a running back end of the season review podcast where me and you kind of talked about how James Conner is, kind of a plotter, more of a power guy, but doesn't really catch the ball. Edmonds is the exact opposite. He's not going to be in there for the goal line stands. Like I said, he's almost an Amos Zaraway type of guy, but he's more of a out in space receiving back. He makes up for everything that Conner lacks. So if you are to move on from Le'Veon Bell, and if there is no solutions that you can really find, maybe for one season you give Edmonds and James Conner a shot as kind of a duo. And kind of like a Jeremy Hill, Gio Bernard type of thing, and you see if that works for a season and kind of go from there. Worst case scenario, he beats out Fitzgerald Toussaint, and maybe he can return kicks. I have no issue with replacing Fitzgerald Toussaint. I'm sure you don't either, especially because you drafted a running back a lot higher than I did. So let's just get into your 7th round pick, and if you know anything about Chase Edmonds.
I know a little bit. Like I say, is just a little guy.
Right.
Missed half the season because of injuries, but other than that, it seems like his only weaknesses, listening to you, is just coming from a small school, so he has a lack of exposure. But sounds comparable to John Kelly from Tennessee. And if he can catch, he can play peekaboo. It sounds like behind a big offensive line.
Yep.
You can't see him, you can't hit him.
You could definitely say a poor man's John Kelly. That's not a bad one right there.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like I'm all for that pick. I mean, you're in the 7th round, and I like their Amos Zaraway too. I mean, it was just a little bowling ball. It was a shame that he had to be the feature back for a short time because It really wasn't his role. But that's an interesting pick. I like that one.
Nice. Yeah, you get Edmonds in a role that a guy like Zaraway was designed for, and when I saw the Zaraway comp, I was like, oh, that's a good one. So, I love that pick. Let's hear your last one. How do you round us out?
I went with defensive tackle Kendrick Norton out of Miami as the Steelers' final pick. He's a stout, powerful, and moves well for a big man. He's got a heavy punch, and he closes down blocks in small spaces. So for a guy his size, he moves well, and you're not gonna outmuscle him. He gets upfield ahead of blocks when he's playing the angles, and he closes quickly on sacks. Worst thing about him is because of poor technique is that he can be run out of plays, and it gets him tied up with double teams. He needs to work with that. But once again, Vaughn, or what's the new defensive tackle?
Dunbar.
Dunbar, that's it. I can't remember his name. He's really good. Once again, he's a college guy, so he knows how to deal with these college mentality, and he really does. You get good coaching, and he's really got a chance to be part of a productive rotation. And I think he could be a steal actually in the 7th round. So that's how I wrapped it up. I addressed the defensive line.
I absolutely believe he can be a steal in the 7th round. And, like I said, early into this process, I never really pictured the Steelers taking a D lineman. I don't know, maybe it's just the way I was thinking. But I got into the D lineman late this year, and I haven't gotten into Norton too much. But there was one thing that stuck out from him was someone was gushing about Quentin Nelson, the guard from Notre Dame, my number 1 overall prospect in this draft class. And, I was just reading something that said, well, watch Quentin Nelson against R.J. McIntosh and Kendrick Norton of Miami, and maybe you'll kind of change your view of him. And it didn't really change my view of him because he's still my number 1 guy, but it did change my view of McIntosh and Norton, and those two played extremely well against, in my opinion, the most dominant player in college football. Norton really held his own. Like you said, the strength is just there. I think, like you kind of said, the consistency is really where the issue is with this guy, and if you can consistently get that motor moving, you have a guy that, rep for rep can hang with Quentin Nelson. And there were reps where, like the guy mentioned that, you were saying, oh, wow, Kendrick Norton really got under Quentin Nelson on that one. And you never hear that from Quentin Nelson. It was really just that Miami game was easily his worst tape. And, you start to say, hey, maybe that had something to do with Kendrick Norton. And maybe if you do get this guy consistently going, consistently on the same path, there is something there, and probably in the 7th round, I would probably take him at your selection before I would take P.J. Hall at my selection, if you know what I mean. Just I don't think they're too much different, and when you add in the value of you got your guy, a round and a half later or whatever, I think I would do that instead. But like I said, I'd have to dig into Norton. I don't know too much about him, and especially when it comes to his consistency, which I believe is an issue with him. So, just any final thoughts here? I feel like we kind of went almost, position for position very similarly. I think you had a guard and I had something else extra in there, but you did take a receiver. I don't know. We had one difference, but we pretty much hit the same needs. What do you think overall? Just kind of looking back, not only from your own picks, but just from hearing mine.
I really think that the Steelers have the potential to really have a tremendous draft. If they had your your draft, Parker, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, likewise with yours, though.
See, we should be doing this somewhere. We should actually be working the draft in the front office from looking at our mocks. I mean, we could draft Super Bowl contenders. That's what I'm convinced of.
I'm telling you, Kevin Colbert, I don't know if he doesn't read the letters I send him, or I don't know if he just doesn't respond to him, or if he gets the address wrong. I don't know what the issue is, but he just hasn't responded yet.
I tell you what's happening is your letters are being thrown in the trash, so his job doesn't get taken. That's exactly what it is.
That's it. He's nervous. He knows I'm coming for him.
Yeah, he's committing a federal crime, but he doesn't care. I'm really this draft. It's going to be it's going to be an interesting draft because, like I said, I truly believe 6 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round, and it's going to push a lot of talent down that might not otherwise have been. There's a lot of teams desperate for quarterbacks, and there's good quarterbacks in this. Maybe not first rounders, 6 first rounders, but people are going to reach, and that's going to benefit Pittsburgh. Where their first 2 picks, regardless of what they are going to be great picks.
Yeah, I agree.
That's how
especially as long as they don't take a quarterback, in my opinion. I've seen the rumors, and I talked about, I hope that they went to the Oklahoma State Pro Day with their eyes on James Washington instead of Mason Rudolph. And I honestly just hope Mason Rudolph is gone by the Steelers pick because, like you said, that would mean that an extra player who could actually help the Steelers is going to be there. And it just means that the Steelers are not debating Mason Rudolph, which I really just hope that they're not. So, yeah, I think I kind of have the same sentiment as you, where you showed that they could do it. Safety, linebacker, and I think that we both agree safety and linebacker are the two huge needs. Replacing Bell, replacing Martavis are kind of lower needs, and then you kind of get into an edge rusher, defensive tackle, things like that. But we both hit those four big ones. The linebacker, the safety, the Bell replacement, and the Martavis replacement in different manners. I did it receiver in the second round. You did it receiver in the fifth round. I did it running back in the seventh. You did it running back in the third. And that's what I think you're talking about, is that there's a lot of different scenarios where the Steelers can get this thing right, and it's just don't make that stupid pick, taking a guy like Mason Rudolph in the first round. So let's just hope they don't do that. For Brian Harker, we'll just sign off with that. For Brian Harker of lastwordonprofootball.com, I know his mock draft has been written and posted over there. So if you want to read his insight on every single pick he had that he presented to the table today, head over to lastwordonprofootball.com. I am Parker Hurley. I'm on fullpresscoverage.com. I'll have my mock draft 2.0, which is the one that I just unveiled today on the show. That'll be up at some point this week. 1.0 is up right now on the site, so go check that out. There's also like 70 draft profiles specifically for the Steelers over there, so go check that out. Follow us on Twitter at FPC_Steelers, at Parker Hurley. That was Brian Harker. I'm Parker Hurley. Like I said, we'll probably get back one more time before the draft. We'll probably do one more mock draft with each other, and then we will review the draft from there. So you guys have a great week. We'll hopefully get to you before the draft one more time. So we will talk to you very soon.